Hello and welcome back to Perspectives, bringing you our daily dose of news and views covering the topics we hope are relevant to you. Today, we take a look at a few different angles of Sikh history and culture. The powerful story and legacy of Partition, the equally powerful concept of Langar, and how it's preventing crime, would you believe? And if you're a Sikh and your kids are frustrated that their action figures don't look like them, well, we've got good news for them. And as one of India's most high-profile tycoons goes to meet his maker, we take a look at his legacy. And we couldn't let a show go by without touching on geopolitics. This time it's the Maldives and their relationship with India. Well, joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to all our viewers. And for any of our viewers in the Florida area, our thoughts are with you as you get through the tail end of Hurricane Milton. So we'll be watching that over the next few days. But until then, our thoughts are with you all.
Indeed they are. And James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And as usual, we'll be taking a look at lots of your great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the videos. So thank you as always for those. Right, James, let's get the show on the road. What are you going to start us off with today?
It looks like a, child of divorce almost, Angus. When you talk about the Maldives, they are so far in debt. They are looking at the potential of defaulting on some of that. And now they've turned to India to rescue them, which is quite interesting because at this point, their two biggest creditors seem to be India and China. And China, by a big lead, over $1 billion of their debt. And now India has come in. They're already several hundred million in debt to India. And the interesting part of this, though, is their president, Mohammed Muzi, actually, when he ran for office, one of his platforms was to separate from India, to not be reliant on them, and to be India free. Now it turns out that they are far from India free. They are going to be in debt. And as I said, it's like a child of divorce. They are playing one parent against the other. And in this case, the parents seem to be China and India. But what cost is that going to come with? And of course, India doesn't do anything for free, and neither does China. So as I say, it's, playing with two devils and selling their soul to get a short-term fix for their financial quandaries. They have, over the last several years, started to warm up again to India, taking a lot of debt relief and loans from India, but also currency exchanges, and also very interesting, they're looking at a free trade agreement to help prop up the Maldives economy. Now, this is going to be a very interesting point to watch because, of course, we know that India, when it comes to trying to take control, trying to really impress their way of life and their way of doing things, is very much historic. And we can look at the Punjab, we can look at, all of these other regions in which India wants full control. They claim that they are giving the autonomy, the democracy a chance. They say that they're giving control in elections to certain regions, as we discussed last night, and yet they still keep major control, or the majority of control, of these areas. What are they going to want out of the Maldives? Now, with the strengthening rift between China and India, the Maldives can, of course, play an instrumental role in the geopolitical arena, as well as the geography of location. Will India go back to having a military presence there in the Maldives? We'll have to watch and see. We know that when the president did win office, he did have India pull back a lot of their Indian soldiers that were on the ground in the Maldives, and they were, I'll use this term loosely, they were there for humanitarian and other aid, not as a military force. So when they pulled them back, they replaced them with civilian specialists to help them with those areas. So again, they just basically pulled them back, took the uniform off, and stuck them back in there. But again, it is something that the Maldives, he was voted in to separate from India, and now it seems that he's back in bed even deeper than ever as India looks to be bringing in almost $1 billion of assistance to them. And again, this is going to up their debt load to India and make them more subservient. And again, it's about 1.3 to 1.4 billion that they're in debt to China. At this time, the Maldives only have about 1.5 months worth of imports in terms of their revenues. And that's very essential because they rely heavily on imports for almost everything, being isolated as they are. And so we're going to have to watch and see how this plays out, and how India plans to utilize this ongoing connection and increased reliance of the Maldives on the Modi and Indian government, Angus.
Yeah, this is a very important story. I mean, who would think that a collection, an archipelago of islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean could be so important? Actually, they are hugely strategic for both India and China. China, as we often refer to, is trying to build this infrastructure, this global infrastructure to support, well, on the face of it, its commercial aspirations. In reality, it's the infrastructure for its military and naval aspirations as well. And of course, the Indian Ocean is a key regional area. It obviously encircles India, one of China's regional foes. And of course, it's already got a foothold in Sri Lanka and across many other areas across the Indian Ocean, and of course the Pacific as well, further east. But the Maldives does form, if you look at it on a map, it is an extremely important strategic location. It's very close to India. It's uncomfortably close to India. But it also forms a potential significant pearl, should we say, as part of the China's maritime Silk Road, that it calls it. It's got its trade routes. It's called the Silk Road. It's actually trying to. It's got what do they call it? The Belt Road that is building across the world for trade purposes, but of course it has this maritime Silk Road as well that it is creating, which is linking various strategic, I was going to say naval, on the face of it they're not, they're just commercial freight ports, but in reality they are potential naval bases if things get very militaristic. And there's been essentially a battle over the Maldives for quite some time between, as you say, James, between India and China, and this small group of islands that barely sits above water level. It is the most beautiful place on earth. I have had the fortune of being there once in my life, and it is a fabulously beautiful place. But there's really not very much there apart from beaches and palm trees, to be frank. But it is a potential very useful base for both air power and naval power, which is why it is so important to China. And as you said, James, it is $1.3 billion in debt to China. This is China's age-old, well-trotted out tactic, and it's done it right across West Africa as another example. It's managed to secure huge natural resources across West Africa, doing exactly the same tactic. It's lent money. It's provided these huge levels of loans to countries that are deeply in need of finance to build infrastructure. And in the Maldives, it's actually China has funded a lot of its basic infrastructure in the capital Male, but the bridges and other assets. And of course, now the Maldives find itself deep in debt, as many West African nations have found themselves deeply in debt to China. And of course, China always calls in those debts, and if they don't get it back financially, they get it back in other means. In other words, that's usually over control over natural resources or control over simple access. And of course, that is what it has in the Maldives now. It has control over the Maldivian government, and it's managed to successfully turn the Maldivian government into an anti-Indian government, as you rightly said, James. And of course, recently the president was elected on an anti-India ticket. Now, of course, Narendra Modi, I think, has been a little bit naive and a bit complacent about the Maldives. I think he's been asleep on his watch. He's, without realising it, or if he has realised it, he's not done much about it. He's allowed China to encircle his nation of India. China really now has got some very important strategic assets around India, Maldives being one of them. And now Narendra Modi is sort of flying out to the Maldives, trying to sort of quickly tie up these retrospective agreements and pacts and lending money, but it's all a little bit too little too late. And I think it's of great concern to the West as well, because this does the West no favours either. And I think, Narendra Modi is trying to, I think he's not even calling in debts. I think he's trying to lend more money to the Maldives, essentially just try and win a little bit more leverage over the Maldives. But it concerns me, James. As I said, it's all a little bit too little and too late. I think China already has its grip on the Maldives. And this is going to be a huge, significant loss to India and actually, by extension, the West.
Well, we'll have to watch and see which parent gets custody, I guess.
Indeed, absolutely.
I don't think one's better than the other. I think that they both have their ulterior motives, and I think that it is going to play out to be a very detrimental end for either, no matter which direction it takes. I think it's going to be detrimental to the people of Maldives and to the future of it.
Indeed, it is. But
all right,
still remains
let's take a look at.
Sorry,
go ahead.
So I'm done now. All yours.
So I was going to switch gears now, as India and the world is mourning the loss of an industrial titan in that of Ratan Tata. And he, for many people that may not know the name, and that's not without reason, he has been a part of a family that has been an industrialist. They started in the financial world back in the late 1800s. So through all of the turmoil and trials of India over 100 years, his family has been very prominent in that development and the changes. Now, he has been very quiet when it comes to his privacy. He is not one of these billionaires who has been out in the media, who has outplayed for his ego. He was actually a very reserved person. Even in the world's top billionaire lists, he tried to avoid being on them. He didn't like publicity. Instead, he liked to focus not only on his business, but also on charitable and philanthropic different endeavors. He liked to support the people in need. But the reason why he has played such an interesting role in the history is because the family started out in the financial world, but they also expanded into cars, automotive, aerospace, and of course, many other areas. One of the biggest, I believe the second largest steel company in the world. So he also took on a very instrumental role in expanding the ability for Indian billionaires and business people or others to really take over international businesses and to make their stamp on that world. They bought out the Tetley Tea Company, which of course, we know is the world's second largest production of tea. And I don't think there's anywhere in the world you can go that you don't get the Tetley brand. But they also took over from Ford. They bought out the Jaguar and Land Rover company. So they've really had a reach in the international world of business as well. So it's not just India. But again, because Ratan Tata liked to keep it low key, and he was successful in that. However, with that, of course, the business and political world on all areas of the globe have been reaching out and really expressing their condolences. And, here are some of the different statements and informations about not only himself, but the company. But also of importance is that they will be giving him a very grand goodbye. They are giving him essentially a state funeral. Right now, his body is laying in wake at the National Center for Performing Arts, and that will remain there until the funeral. So it is an opportunity for people of India to pay respect. Not only the political ends and business world, but anybody who feels that connection, because he touched the lives of so many in India and around the globe. Now, I don't know much about his politics. I don't know much about his family's politics or, their belief in the caste system or anything like that. This is strictly looking at it from a business and a law standpoint for India as a whole. So here there are just a couple of recaps, and this article is courtesy of the BBC. So the tributes have been coming in from across the world, as I stated. A very prominent business leader who died Wednesday night in Mumbai. He had an illness and was rushed to hospital where he did pass away. His reach, as it states here in the article, is the UK-based car brands Jaguar and Land Rover and Tetley Tea, and so many other holdings that people haven't heard of, outside of India at least anyway. But he had, as I said, passed away in the Mumbai hospital. It's a huge loss for India's business industry because not only was it annual revenues of over $100 billion, but also he was very much, in terms of the small business, a supporter of entrepreneurs and other businesses to get their feet off the ground and to really empower people to make something, to fulfill their lives, to make their dreams come true in terms of building substantial business and really working themselves out of poverty. So he did have just a massive reach. He was also invested in other ventures such as Paytm, which is actually the largest digital payment system in India, and revolutionized that. Some other points here that are listed, but we won't go through them all because I don't want to be here all night, or we won't get to any other stories. But here's a photo of him. And that was at Cornell University in New York City, which is also my alma mater. I also went to the School of Architecture, Arts and Design there. So it was, he studied architecture, but again, when he returned to India after college and he went back into the family business, turned it around. There were some losses, of course, with the company over the years, but overall, he has really brought a resurgence of the success of the family business, of the conglomerate, and had an impact around the globe. So he will be missed. And again, people will be sharing their tributes. I'm sure you'll see just lit up throughout social media over the next little while. Not only their tributes to him, but also their memories, their business dealings, and it's going to be really a big loss for the country, Angus.
Yeah, actually, Tata is a name very well known in this country, here in the UK, because, as you rightly pointed out, he bought several actually very high-profile UK brands. And obviously it was with a commercial thing in mind, but he actually essentially came in and invested in these dying brands and reinvigorated them. Jaguar Land Rover being a prime example of that. And of course, Tetley, he ended up buying Tetley Tea, which I have to say I'm a great fan of. But also, the steel industry. And the steel industry used to be, certainly in the northern part of England, particularly an area called Sheffield, a city called Sheffield, which is very well known, particularly in the Industrial Revolution, for its steel production. It was, again, a dying industry here in the UK, and Tata came in. Tata Steel, again, became a very high-profile brand here in the UK. So, and actually, his legacy is enormous in many ways. He is known for his philanthropic attitude. And he's one of these rare people. He's one of these rare billionaires. Now, to become a billionaire in the world, there's no doubt you have to be a pretty ruthless person, just in terms of your genetic makeup. You have to be quite a ruthless person. And it's very rare to find a multi-billionaire who actually isn't just making money for the sake of money, and isn't just philanthropic for just because the way it looked, for PR purposes, for public relation purposes. Like I think a lot of billionaires do give a lot away of their money, but there's always there's an agenda behind it. I think he was a genuine philanthropist, and one particular attractive attribute about Tata, and you touched on this, James, about his politics. Actually, he was very apolitical. He actually, in fact, he was not a believer. No, that's not the wrong word. He wasn't a believer. He did not like politics. He actually, and he did write, I think in the past, if I remember correctly, he was quite vocal, and even wrote a book. It came in one of the books that he wrote, that he felt that Indian politics, particularly since independence, since partition, that Indian politics had moved away from looking after the nation's best interests into more self-interest. So politicians essentially became a lot more corrupt. It was more about self-service rather than the interests of the nation. So he deliberately moved away and shied away from politics, and deliberately did not get involved in politics for that very reason. He felt that Indian politics was going down the path of corruption and self-interest, and it was moving away from actually representing the people that it exists for. So again, I think that is a measure of the man. And it's great to see he had a great age, 86. I think his legacy to the world, on balance, is a hugely, hugely positive one. And I think as he meets his maker, he will have, on the face of it at least, a very clear conscience.
Absolutely. And when people look at it of him joining the family business, so to speak, and generational wealth, it should be noted, though, that he was a very, very shrewd businessman. He was very wise. He came in to several of the family's businesses that were floundering and really gave them a resurrection and led them out of dire straits in some cases. And really, he showed his wisdom. And, not only did he go to Cornell, he also studied at Harvard. So he was not a dumb man. He wasn't just one of these, generational kids that comes in, takes over the family business, and just rides on the coattails of history. He actually made history and made a future with the company, expanded, and really, really put it on the international map in the history of the business world.
Indeed, quite a legacy. And I say it's very hard to find anybody with a bad word to say against him. And that's, as I say, that's very rare for a billionaire these days. Okay, let's move on to my first story. And we often talk about legacies and passing the stories from older generations down. Well, of course, one of the key events, and we've already touched on this in that last story, that happened in India was, of course, 1947 and Partition. It was a dreadful time in history in the subcontinent in terms of the number of people that died. It was a massacre. It was a genocide on an almost unimaginable scale. That hundreds of thousands at least died, and there are talk of over 1 million people dying in the most horrific ways after the British pulled out of India very quickly, as it turned out, and India was divided along, in simplistic terms, into 3 areas: East and West Pakistan and what now became India. Now, of course, a lot of people were heavily impacted by Partition, and of course the older generations now who are still around, who remember these times, have fortunately in many cases have passed these stories down to the younger generations. And I came across a story yesterday that was written by 2 young Sikh ladies about their grandmother, who told them, and actually then asked their grandmother, who was around at Partition time, and asked their grandmother, can you tell us about it? It is important that we know what happened. It's important that we know the stories, because again, it has such an impact on generations today, and these stories should not be forgotten. And they actually wrote a very passionate and a very emotional article. It's a fabulous article. It's a very powerful article that was in Sikh Histories, the website Sikh Histories recently, and it. These two ladies wrote essentially what their grandmother told them, and I'll quickly, again, it's quite a long article, so I'll just cherry pick some of the key parts of this, but it really gives an insight into the horrors that happened in 1947 and that huge exodus of people, that mass exodus of people crossing that newly created boundary between what is now Pakistan and now India. And of course, those moving east and those moving west. And slap bang in the middle of that, of course, was the Punjab, as it is today. And the Sikh community at the time was hugely impacted by this and was devastated by the deaths and the massacres that happened. So anyway, I'll quickly flick through this article. And it says, in 1947, Partition of India, an event of such magnitude and upheaval, it cannot be easily forgotten. Until today, many stories are still silenced and hidden. The human consequences of the partition have been called a holocaust, and rightly so it was. The tragedies that ensued from the unprecedented occurrence of a mass migration of people in the span of just 2 months. And again, I think people forget this happened so quickly. It was a huge exodus of millions of people in literally just a few weeks. And over those 2 months, the occurrence is still prevalent today. And just reviewing the count of bodies that were killed, slaughtered, displaced, sexually savaged is unfathomable. Statistics are often the ways of defining a tragedy and conveying the traumas that the victims endured. And one of the most compelling differences in literature of the estimated death toll of partition varies from 200,000 from the perspective of the British and 2 million from estimates of those that were impacted by it. Records show that in 2 months, 20 million people were displaced. An estimated 75,000 women were abducted and raped. 75,000! Countless families were divided, unrecorded properties were lost, homes were destroyed, communities pitted against each other. So I'll just reiterate those statistics. So the estimate from the British is 200,000 dead, estimates on the ground 2 million. So the truth obviously was somewhere in between. I mean, those again, this is genocide or Holocaust, choose your word of preference, but it is just unimaginable, the deaths that happened in just 2 months. Yeah. There is an absence of any public acknowledgement of how the trauma experienced can be addressed in terms of its impact or the lasting consequences of a racial and religious divide that still haunts India and Pakistan to this day. It absolutely does. Many individuals don't grow up learning about partition unless someone in their family lived through it, as there are hardly any memorials or public places that discuss these traumatic events, coupled with the fact that there is a lack of official recognition. This is really important, this. The focus is always on how India gained independence and not how partition caused unprecedented suffering. And this is absolutely right, is that it's almost like it is, because it is almost a bit of a shameful part of its history, it's been buried and suppressed. Let's celebrate independence. Of course, every August we have Independence Day, and it's a hugely positive celebrated event. But of course, it turns a blind eye to this mass murder, this mass killing of so many people at exactly that same time that allowed independence to happen. Our grandparents and ancestors silently endured displacement and violence. They continue to live their lives reconciling with the belief that they may not see their neighbours again, blocking out memories of the family they've lost. They don't fully register how many corpses they've seen. They suppress the feeling of missing the home they've left behind. They ignore the sexual assault they experienced or witnessed, and they try to live a new life. But their stories are important, and it's up to us, these two girls write, it is up to us, the younger generation, to keep these things alive. How important this, and we do say this regularly on here, particularly referring to 1984 and the 80s and 90s in the Punjab. And Kirpal Kaur, a young woman in her teenage years, this is their grandmother they're talking about. Kirpal Kaur, she was a teenager in 1947, lived a peaceful life in West Punjab, which is now, of course, on the Pakistan side. Since Kirpal and her family were Sikh Punjabis, they were forced to migrate to East Punjab, now present-day Punjab, as their home would be abandoned until a Muslim family from West Punjab occupied it. Of course, there's this mass swap of people crossing what is now the border. Kirpal's sister, Deepa Kaur, was only 6 months old. At the time, Kirpal, get this, Kirpal was told by many others who'd thrown their children in flowing rivers to throw Deepa away too, so that Kirpal's journey could be easier. So the story is that many had to literally throw their babies and toddlers into rivers just to remove them, get rid of them, so that they could actually make the journey successfully alive.
Wow.
But Kirpal didn't listen. Kirpal protected her sister. She couldn't protect a 3-year-old brother who fell victim to harsh weather conditions on their journey to East Punjab. So their little 3-year-old toddler died on this journey because of the cold conditions. Words couldn't sum up the casualties she witnessed at such a young age. Don't forget, this is a teenage girl witnessing this. From seeing corpses everywhere to constantly feeling the threat of men as a young woman. Now, Gurdip Singh was just 6 years old when he and his family made the journey from West Punjab to East Punjab. He was a Sikh Punjabi, so he had no choice but to leave his home in Lahore, Pakistan. And it felt as if the entire village was packing to leave and live a new life. Individuals that made the journey through the new border travelled however they could, some by train, some by foot, and Gurdip's family travelled by horse attached to carriage. Although many individuals left their belongings, they were robbed of them. Gurdip, just like Kirpal, remembers witnessing the number of corpses every step of the way in trains, homes, carriages, rivers, or just piles of corpses. There was no way you could look away without seeing dead people. Again, it's almost unimaginable today what happened.
Absolutely.
Kirpal lived on to marry Gurdip in 1952, and together they had 5 children, 11 grandkids, and presently 2 great-grandchildren. Though they witnessed mass death, they found life in a little corner of East Punjab. A world so unfamiliar somehow became home, strangers became family, and struggles that most can only fathom in nightmares were their reality. They didn't make excuses for their humble beginnings. They didn't collapse at the sight of adversity. For the rest of their lives, they contended with life with a spirit of hope, peace and strength. They would recount their experience of living through the partition as bedtime stories about brave individuals who endured great hardships. These bedtime stories were used to subtly impart life lessons about perseverance. But as the children grew older, they'd come to the realisation that they weren't just fictional characters, they were reflections of their parents' lived experiences. And that's the story of Kirpal and Gurdip, and as they write, are Biji and Bapuji, their grandparents. So as Kirpal and Gurdip's grandchildren, these girls write that their sacrifices have influenced how we, as youngsters, navigate our daily lives. We've both deliberately pursued careers centred on giving back to our community. We are deeply committed to living a life devoted to helping others and making a meaningful impact. And they sign off this really wonderful article with: war, genocide, rape, displacement, oppression, misogyny and racism have been ingrained in Punjab's history. To be 2 generations away from our grandparents' experience and 1 generation away from the 1984 Sikh genocide endured by our family, how could we not feel or acknowledge everything that has happened to Punjabi Sikhs? Now more than ever, it's crucial to keep these stories alive, not just to honour the memory of our grandparents, but to remain grounded in our origins and to remind ourselves that the fight for freedom is ongoing. I don't think there's much I can add to that. It's a very, very powerful article. It says so much that we've reiterated regularly here on the channel, and it is so important to keep these memories, these stories alive. The suffering that the Sikh community has endured since partition is just unimaginable, is it not, James?
It is. And I mean, the inspiration of the people who just struggled, but they persevered, Angus. They got through it and they built a life after losing everything behind them. And, you know, it also is such a testament to the welcoming and the way that the Punjab brought them in, and they actually created a family, a community around. You know, it just, again, it's just beyond words and inspiring, Angus.
It is. And I think the resilience, there's something genetically ingrained in the Sikh community that is a story of resilience. It is a story of deep suffering over many, many decades and years. But of course, they've turned that around, and many people have just curled up into a ball and just given up. But not the Sikh people. They have actually, instead, they've turned this around with a huge amount of resilience and of course, based on the whole philosophy of Sikhi. They've got off their backsides and they've been entrepreneurial, they've built new lives. They've obviously fled to other nations, they've built the diaspora, and we see the success stories right across the Western world. And I think this is just so testament to what is, as I say, ingrained in the Sikh psyche. It's a very powerful thing, and this is why I have absolutely no doubt and complete confidence that Khalistan will happen, because we see, even despite the horrors that the community has suffered, whether it's partition, whether it's the 1984, whether it's the 1980s and 1990s, whether it's everything that's happened since, is that they are still there. They are still keeping their heads up. They are still driving forward, and they're driving the Khalistan movement forward because they know there is light at the end of this tunnel. They know that all this work, this resilience, this effort will be rewarded with their own sovereign land. And that's why I think when we read stories like this, it really gives, I think, even the community, when they pass these stories around, it gives the community that backbone, that absolute steel, solid backbone to know that they will pull through this and end up with their own nations. So, yeah, and I'm going to move on to my next story, James, which is, and again, talking about turning things around and the philosophy and the foundations of Sikhi. We talk regularly, particularly recently, about Langar. Now, Langar has, again, so many positive things about it, and its whole ethos, its whole concept, and its whole philosophy is based on the groundings of Sikhi. It is based on the belief that everybody is equal, that everybody should be seen as equal, treated as equal, whether you're male or female, whether you're from any background, race, religion, creed, whatever your social standing, your political standing, everybody is seen as an equal. Everybody sits on the ground, cross-legged, side by side, and shares meal. It is all about charitable giving. It is selfless service, and Langar is that in spades. So, of course, I've reported already this week that this week is Langar week. And when I was looking at this story, loads of wonderful stories about Langar week around the internet, particularly across Sikh websites and social media. And I uncovered a wonderful video that was on a YouTube channel. And I'm going to play you 1 minute of this video, and it's just slightly going off on a slight tangent here about Langar. And it did say that one discovery through Langar Week has revealed that this 500-year-old Sikh practice helps prevent crime, believe it or not, as in fact it provides a lifeline to people who would otherwise need to steal. And of course, yeah, as you'll see in this video, this is shot somewhere in London, I think in a part of London. Let me just play this video for you now.
There was a guy I met last year, yeah? I was in Southall, right? And we do this thing called Langar Week, where we explain to people what Langar is, yeah? And there was a guy there, a homeless guy, Scottish guy. And I was talking to him, and he goes, I could be out there trying to rob a Kit Kat right now, yeah? Because I'm poor, I'm hungry, yeah? I could be robbing a Kit Kat just to fill my stomach, yeah? He goes, but I come here, I get a free meal. He goes, so I'm not committing a crime. I never thought of Langar as stopping crime. You don't think about this as a crime reduction technique. But imagine how many people get desperate, right? And then end up basically robbing people to make a bit of money. Happens, isn't it? Yeah. Now, the other thing is, he also said something very interesting. He goes, when I was in Southall begging, people keep coming up to me saying, go to Gurdwara. And he was like, why are they telling me to go to Gurdwara? I come here, I'm hungry. Instead of giving me food or money, they say go to Gurdwara. So he got confused. So then he asked someone, he goes, what is this Gurdwara place? Why should I go there? Well, they keep telling me to go there, why? And they go, because there's free food there. You're hungry, there's free food there. So that's a bit of seva, isn't it? That's a bit of helping someone. You can tell them, yo, there's free meal at the Gurdwara, go there.
So of course, I mean, the wonderful thing about Langar is it's the great leveller, but it's also helping the homeless. Of course, it is a hugely charitable concept, and this gentleman, I believe it was Jagraj Singh Hundal, known as Bhai Jagraj Singh, who was talking in that video. And he's basically saying, and the premise of what he was saying was, that the homeless people, and one particular homeless person that was treated to Langar, he actually had to admit, he said, look, if you hadn't fed me, I would have had no choice but to rob a store just to literally stay alive and eat. So even just through this selfless service of Langar, it is, again, ironically, preventing crime, one of the wonderful spin-offs of Langar. But actually, again, when I researched and I saw this video, there was lots of comments below the video, and I thought, and they were saying, what a wonderful person this guy was, Bhai Jagraj Singh. So I did a little bit of research, and I want to pay tribute to this gentleman because he deserves it. And I'll just give you, it's quite poignant, this. He was known as Bhai Jagraj Singh. He was a British Army officer and a Sikh, as we call them in the UK, a Sikh preacher. He was the founder of Sikh organisations Everything's 13 and the Sikh Press Association. I didn't know this, and of course we deal a lot with the Sikh Press Association here in the UK. And he's also the founder of the YouTube channel Basics of Sikhi. Jagraj is considered as one of the most influential British Sikhs of the 21st century. He was born in London in 1979. He studied philosophy, politics and economics at the University of Oxford. The University of Oxford, for those who don't know, is actually one of the leading universities on the planet. It's an extraordinarily intelligent guy. After graduating from the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst as an officer, he was commissioned into the Royal Logistics Corps before finding a job in the Finance and Recruitment Centre. He founded Everything's 13, a project to spread awareness of the Sikh faith, both digitally and through the English language. His most notable work was the YouTube channel Basics of Sikhi. Loads of great videos on there, so do check it out. The channel he founded educated the general public about the basic tenets of the Sikh religion and raised awareness about its existence using parchar, or preaching. He also founded the Sikh Press Association. In 2017, he was awarded a Point of Light Award by the UK Prime Minister, Theresa May. And in that letter, in that award, the Prime Minister wrote, "Your important work is doing much to positively engage both young Sikhs and the wider community with your faith. You are inspiring those of all faiths and none to make a difference with their lives." But shortly after that, he was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and he died in 2017. He was survived by his wife and 3 children. So a very poignant end to that. But again, I think just a figure, just one of so many really significant people who've lived their lives and lived a huge life of selfless service. And I think, James, that we must pay tribute to people like this. His life was dreadfully cut short, but what a life he lived and what a contribution to society that he did through his faith.
Absolutely. And I completely agree on how it can cut down on crime, but taking it even a step further, it restores some self-respect and some dignity to the individuals because they don't have to go and steal to make that meal. They don't have to, partake in criminal activity. They know also that they have a restored faith in humanity, that they do matter, that they do care to somebody. And a lot of times when people are on the streets or they're down and out, they just lose that ability to foresee that there are people that care out there. And for him to lift that person up and give them their dignity, but even if it was just through a meal, it showed them that people cared, and that is just more powerful than words.
Indeed. So we'll let this stand as a simple tribute to Bhai Jagraj Singh, a very powerful figure.
Absolutely.
And then on a happier note, let us move on to my final story, and I love this story. This is a story of toys, Khalsa toys. A Coventry man, this is a city here in the Midlands of the UK, a Coventry man who launched an inclusive toys business during COVID said he was amazed to have achieved global success, receiving orders from as far as the USA and Australia. Sukh Singh said the Khalsa toy store has gone from strength to strength since launching in 2021. Well, what's this all about? His idea was sparked by a question he was asked by 2 young boys when he was visiting a friend in Wolverhampton, that's another city in the UK. He said the youngsters were watching telly when they said, "Why don't we have any toys that look like us?" So he started to draw up a few sketches of Sikh figurines, which he named Bhai Singh, Sher Singh and Teg Kaur. And nearly 3 years on, he said he wants to expand the business and create 2D animations to help kids see the best versions of themselves. He said, and he recounts the story, he said he was at his business partner's house in Wolverhampton. He's got 2 young boys. They were playing with some generic toys and watching Netflix. And they looked a bit disgruntled and they just threw a couple of the toys and said, "Dad, why don't we have any toys that look like us?" And he said at that time it was just a bit of a light bulb moment. And from there, we would meet up and discuss a few ideas. We started thinking, what's really stopping us from doing this? As long as we have a positive attitude, a belief, a faith in God that we can get this done and approach it with a good mindset, I believe we can just learn how to do it and bring it to life. And so, of course, he created these figurines. And he said the response to the Sikh-themed toys has been, quote, phenomenal. He said the Khalsa toy store now has a global reach, with orders coming in from all over the world, including the US and Australia. And he said, we've had a great response and demand, particularly where, of course, unsurprisingly, there are large Sikh communities such as Canada, USA, Toronto, California, Australia, and even some parts of Malaysia. And one of the things we've got in mind and are working quite hard on scripting and everything is to get their backstory in an animation which will cover real historic Sikh moments. We've got further products lined up which will show them in different forms as well as completely different ranges which represent different time periods through history and even more contemporary figurines. So there you go, James. Action figures of Sikh past history figures, and potentially even an animation series to spin off from it. So I think this is great for the kids. It must be frustrating for the kids to to get these action figures that don't have any connection to them, but now they do. And I think this is a great idea, and I have no doubt this will be very popular across the community.
Absolutely, Angus. And if you close your share screen for a second, I'll actually pull one of the toys up. I just pulled up as you were talking about this.
Oh,
so I'll actually share one of the toys here. It's pretty cool. I was curious. I'm gonna have to order a couple and put them on my desk for one of the upcoming shows here.
There we
go. Look at that. Isn't that awesome?
Well, if Khalsa Toys wants to sponsor us, get in touch. You know where to reach us.
Absolutely, but I'm going to order a couple, Angus, and we'll have our action figures as guests on the show. They probably won't talk much, but I'm going to order a couple and see how it looks.
Absolutely, I think I may join you on that one as well.
Maybe
so well done to. Sorry, James.
I was just going to say, maybe after they make their appearance on our show, we'll get some emails and we'll have a little draw or something. We'll send them out to viewers. We'll make it a prize or something.
Indeed, what a great idea! Absolutely. So let's move on that note onto our comments section. Lots of comments we've received over the last few days. Thank you for those. And the first one from yesterday's show was I love something or other. Very interesting observation, and this was my comments about Gurpreet Singh Johal's interview, right, saying, and it still remains a very unwatched interview for some reason. I did speculate that it has been shadow banned, but this person has actually commented, and you're absolutely right on this. It wouldn't surprise in the slightest that there was a bit of shadow banning going on, considering the amount of comments removed or just getting no visibility on after posting. And of course, yeah, we do know that a lot of comments are not appearing. A lot of you have tried to put comments up and they are disappearing. So we have speculated that this interview with Jaggy's brother has been shadow banned. But you do make this interesting comment. This is absolutely right. The sound quality on that interview wasn't great. Could this be contributing towards the lower figures? It could well be, actually. And you do suggest clearing up and amplifying the sound. No offence intended, just something personally added. Well, no offence, of course, is taken on that. Of course, we do appreciate and we do encourage any criticism, comments, any corrections. We are thick-skinned, James and I, so please do feel free. And we can only improve if you let us know what we're doing wrong or things that you would prefer to see, etc. So we love this feedback. So no, absolutely no offence is received, and we do appreciate your comments. And actually, I would just say on that interview, I don't know why the sound was so terrible. And you think it's bad now on that interview. You should have heard what it actually sounded like. I had literally spent hours cleaning up the audio. Gurpreet and I, in the time of the interview, as we were discussing, we stopped several times to try and work out what on earth was wrong with the audio. And immediately my suspicious mind, James, immediately jumps to, I wonder if there was external influence, knowing that interview was going on, because I've never had that same problem with any other of my guests. It was only Gurpreet's interview, James. So could there have been a hidden hand of naughtiness going on from outside?
It could have been, but it also could have been just one of those things that happens.
It could indeed. I prefer the conspiracy theory on that one. It makes much
more exciting, Angus.
Exactly. Anyway, thank you for that comment. Now, Mohan Danoa makes the comment. We talked about, James, this was your story of Modi winding down, well, at least weakening the Indian Air Force. And this person makes the comment that Modi is actually a Gujarati. Gujaratis don't believe armed forces are necessary. They're all business people. Not a single Gujarati in any of the armed forces is in for a rude shock from China. He is absolutely indeed. And Arunachal Pradesh will be the first of all China. It will. But then he followed up with this comment. I'm happy to hear that the number of Sikhs joining the Indian Army is decreasing. Better they join the Canadian, British and US armed forces. Indeed, I wouldn't disagree with that. But of course, they should save themselves for the armed forces of Khalistan, James.
You betcha. And I'll tell you, I'm a little too old to go into training, but I'll come out and do a show with them or something.
Absolutely, and I myself have worn the uniform of the British Army with pride, but I certainly would not be averse to turning up in a khalistan cap badge. I would wear that with pride, and I'd be more than happy to inspect the troops. So when the armed forces are in place in Khalistan, yeah, I'll certainly be happy to walk down the line inspecting the troops. There you go. But a serious point. You're absolutely right, and it's interesting that this, and we've had this before, where even Winston Churchill himself, praised the men from the northwest of India. They were naturally soldiers. They just made good soldiers because I referred to the steel backbone of the Sikh community. It has always been there. There is something genetic about those born and bred in northwest India. They breed them tough up there. They make great forces. Clearly not the case in Gujarat.
And let's not forget that the Canadian military, actually, as the head of the Canadian military, had a Sikh for many years. So let's keep that in mind as well, how amazing they are.
They make great soldiers, as we often refer to, indeed. Parwinder Kaur, good news. Modi, the way you do this, now good news to India. The government is losing very badly. Now, this is a comment referring back to when we talked, again, I think we referred to Modi, his poor strategic decision-making in terms of the armed forces. One of which, James, you referred to, was that is looking externally to third-party countries to resource a lot of the military hardware. And as Parwinder rightly points out, it's actually Modi is losing out very badly. He should be building this stuff at home. He should be resourcing it from his own economy.
Well, and what's happening, Angus, is that the technology and the engines that they require. Now, India did develop some engines, but they failed miserably. They're going to be using those in future iterations of the unmanned drones. But right now, they're actually working to outsource and bring in technology from the UK, from the US, or from France. And of course, there's a long history of Rolls-Royce, of General Electric, and I don't recall off the top of my head the French company. But again, the problem that they're having with those negotiations is that India wants to retain any and all intellectual property that comes out of the development of the technology. So again, they're going to have to outsource, but they're going to bring it in so that they're partnered with the Indian companies to make this happen. So. But again, they're not going to see any results until at least 2030 and beyond. So,
yeah, it is opportunistic actually for the West, who are of course trying to tie up India as an ally. And of course, one inextricable way of doing that is to be one of its key suppliers of arms and military hardware. So it does work in that effect. But of course, I rather tongue-in-cheek, of course, say, and I refer to the Pages story. You've got to be careful where you buy your hardware from, because who knows what could happen in the future. And I refer to Pages there, James.
We'll send them to IKEA.
On that note, let's move on to Satvir's comment. India puts 60 to 70% of victims behind bars. The courts and judiciary only provide justice to government-linked people. Yeah, again, James, we talk about this a lot. Indian justice only seeks to serve those who support the government. Those who are against the government don't seem to find justice, certainly not quickly. I would call it a two-tier justice system, James.
I can't even say two-tier. I think there's even beyond that, because there's people that get locked up and just, it's as though they're forgotten about forever, as opposed to those who actually make noise and are heard by the media. And then, of course, there's the friends of Modi and his BJP who get, express lines to get away with whatever they want. So it's horrible.
Yeah, I'd call it a judicial black hole. You go against the government, then you'll find yourself spiralling down into that judicial black hole, never to be seen again. Right, very long.
Is that we do see an increase in the judiciary. The judges are starting to push back against government agencies, and that really starting to put them on notice that they're going to face penalties and fines and other ramifications if they don't stop their delays and stop wasting the court time. So at least the judges in some areas are pushing back.
Let's hope so. And if the judiciary can remain apolitical itself, if it can remain removed from politics, then there is a chance for democracy and the rule of law to exist and grow. As soon as the judiciary gets influenced by politics, and actually we've seen that to some degree here in the West, then you start to lose that disengagement and that loss of rule of law, that disengagement from impartiality, which is so crucial, so fundamental to good law. So anyway, let's move on. And I love whatever wrote a very, very long comment, and I had to sort of pay tribute really to the effort that went into this huge comment. So thank you for this comment. And I've had to just sort of cherry pick just a few key lines from your comment, because you did make a lot of very valid points in your comment. But I'll pick one or two key sentences that you wrote down. This, of course, refers back to that Sacramento Bee article, that really important article that was released a few days ago in California. And it talked about soft transnational repression and the effects of the Hindu American Foundation and their influence on educating law enforcement, etc., with this fake narrative. And you talk about Sikh organisations making a united stand against misinformation, which is so important. And of course, here it's when it works when they are hit in the pocket. In other words, when they are threatened with legal action. And I'll give you an example of this. Prime example. I was again contacted overnight by Bhai Singh Binder, a gentleman who has been very active in campaigning, particularly against the Hindu American Foundation. And the Hindu American Foundation, in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, as a result of that Sacramento Bee article, posted up on X a very defamatory article referring to the Sacramento Bee, referring to the Gurdwara in California, that it referenced in that article that the Hindu American Foundation had, one of their representatives, had essentially libelled or slandered. It was said in a radio interview. They'd said that Gurdwara was a hotbed of drugs and arms dealing. And they linked Bhai Singh Binder to that same Gurdwara as effectively running that Gurdwara. And it was nonsense, absolute nonsense. And of course, the Gurdwara itself has issued a statement saying, how dare you say something so libelous and so untrue. Bhai Singh Binder, likewise, is directly impacted by this, because they also, the HAF, the Hindu American Foundation, posted up on X a slanderous post linking Bhai Singh Binder to this. And they had to withdraw. That post was taken down within 24 hours. And I asked Bhajan, was that through legal pressure? And he said, not yet, but it's a case of watch this space. And this point is actually bang on. Hit them where it hurts. If they are posting up misinformation, and it is clear, blatant defamation, slander or libel, there is a legal case there. Threaten these organisations with legal action. Do it all legal, all above board, and they are forced to take it down. Misinformation is misinformation, certainly if it is libelous or slanderous, if it defames anybody in the Sikh community. The Sikh community must stand up legally and take these people on, head on legally, and say, if you want to put this up, we will take you to court over it. So yeah, a very important point there, Rose James. I don't know if you want to comment on that one.
No, I think that there's a lot of great points there. I also believe that the biggest part is, hit them in the pocketbook, because that always works. And that's not only against, this group, but it's against anybody. They don't like it when you mess with their money. In terms of the task force, absolutely. There needs to be, they really need to focus on this and really keep a tracking of the type of misinformation, but also the slanderous statements that they make against others to try and discredit the Gurdwaras, the Sikh community. And we see it so much that, it needs to be something that's fought back.
Yeah. And you raised a lot of points in your comment. We don't have time to cover them all, but another one was an interesting one. The Hindus are talking about Hinduphobia, and this is something we see across the US and Canada, is that the Hindutva organisations are trying to create this concept of this dreadful Hinduphobia going on. And right. They're using that to leverage then to turn things negative against the Sikh community. And this commenter says, well, what about Sikh? Maybe we should apply for recognition of Sikhophobia. But in fact, then you go on to make the point, well, actually, no, we do not see ourselves as victims. We don't live in a victim culture. We just get off our backsides, as we often say, James. The Sikhs are just known, we're not victims. If things turn against us, we just fight back. We don't say we're victims and curl up into a ball and play the victim. We get off our backsides and we fight back and we build and we see everybody as equal. And again, the comment goes on to explain about how the basic philosophy is we see everybody as equal and nobody's a victim. It's up to you as an individual and as a community to stand up and essentially fight back. So I think it's a very powerful point. Sadly, I didn't have time to go through a lot of some very valid comments in that one. But thank you very much for that comment nonetheless. Right, we must move on, James. Running out of time. Hardile has made, this is an important request. Could you please interview Dr. Iqtidar Chima of the Sikh Parliament? Actually, funnily enough, I have reached out to the Sikh Parliament. I'm struggling to get hold of somebody of significance in the World Sikh Parliament in Germany. There's one gentleman I have been trying to reach unsuccessfully. If you happen to have any contact details, or if anybody in our audience has contact details with particularly Dr. Iqtidar Chima or anybody significant within that Sikh Parliament, let me know. Message us at message@satellitetv.com. Send me an email because I have actually tried to reach out to these guys to bring them in for a discussion. So thank you for that suggestion. Captain Jat. Hi Angus and James, watching your show from the UK. Great show to watch. Well, thank you for watching us. And I know we do have a good audience here in the UK. So a big hello to all of you out there here in the UK. A special hello from me in London. And Charanjit Singh, Tony says, Sat Sri Akal, Mr. Angus and James, or Sat Sri Akal to you. Great reporting, as always, from Cincinnati, Ohio, USA. So hello to all you guys out in Ohio. And James, I think this is more your territory. We've got RLK2 in North Delta, BC, and Jorai from Calgary, your neighbour.
And there you go, North Delta, just down the road, and Calgary, well, about 10-hour drive.
Indeed. So,
hey,
thank you. So thank you to each and every one of you who's let us know where you are watching us from. It's very much appreciated. And as Jorai signs off, Khalistan Zindabad and rotten eggs to Jai Shankar, the Indian External Affairs Minister. And absolutely, I think we can endorse that sentiment. But we will, of course, always sign off with a very positive Khalistan Zindabad, Jorai. Rightly said. But unfortunately, we must draw things to a close as we have, as always, run out of time. But you have been watching Perspectives. Don't forget to keep those comments coming in. We do really enjoy going through them. We do read every single one that you send us. We, of course, appreciate the very complimentary ones, but we love the detailed ones and the educational ones. And do, of course, correct us when we get things wrong. Do educate us if there are things that you think we should know about, because, of course, it is a very, very powerful learning journey for me and James equally. So do keep those coming in. Don't forget, of course, you can email us directly at message@satellitetv.com, which many of you have done. Thank you very much. And apologies if I have not replied or I'm slow in responding. Of course, we are hugely busy putting the show together, but we do read them. We do appreciate them. If we haven't responded, we still have read them. And just be patient and we'll either get back to you or we'll feature you on the show. So thank you for those. Do keep them coming. But in the meantime, we must wrap things up. It is a goodbye from me and it is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.